we're going to take a look at how the two different methods of which you can create a flow, so that's Flow Legacy or Flow 2.0, and the different systems that they use, which is Dendro and DAG. We're going to actually create a row of trees using those different methods. And so if I grab the first line here, I first want to navigate to the Flow Editor tool. So the Flow Editor tool is over here on the left-hand side. I'm just going to select that and open up my flow panel. So I can see I am using the Flow Legacy tool up the top right. I've currently got that selected, and you can toggle between them like so. And what I want to do here, there's a number of quick transformations and raw transformations. So I can very quickly see what I want to choose and how that transformation is going to impact my geometry in Giraffe. I want to do a very simple transformation of an array feature, as I want to place a number of trees along in a row. So points along a line, and I'm going to select that one. So we can see here, the Flow Legacy uses the Dendro system, which is basically your tree structure. So you start off with your root feature, which is the black one here in our original line, and then we develop off that. But we can only ever develop in one motion, in a linear fashion. So we can't cycle back onto that feature and add extra details or rules in place. So we're just continually transforming that line as we go. And you can do that by adding nodes here. So I can add an extra node. I can delete them. I can actually split them as well. So if there was multiple transformations happening on this same line, we could do that as well. And I'm just going to delete that feature. So what we see here, we've got the black, you've got a little legend up here is the root feature. We've got the define transformation, which is what I selected, and is that array tool. And if I select on that, we can get some additional properties here that we can interact with. So the spacing is currently at 10 meters. I'm sort of happy with that, so I'm going to leave that. Whether you want to offset it from the start, some corner gaps and other properties down below here, so you can jump in and edit them through this panel here. And the last one here is an output feature. So this tells us what do we want Giraffe to output at the end or at each of these nodes that we've now created from this original root feature. And what I want to do here is if I select that node, we can see my properties for this output feature up the top here. And it's asking me to select a usage. So if I select here, and I'm just looking to create a row of trees. So if I go tree, because a tree is a usage, I select my tree, it then asks me what species, round's fine, I'll leave it at that. And now that's essentially done. So I'm going to apply my changes and then collapse my panel. And if I rotate into 3D, we can see that my trees are now all working in the flow that I created. And so when I adjust this line, as expected, those trees will track against that line. It is also worth mentioning, though, that in order to edit, say, the spacing, so if we create this flow and we decide that 10 meters is in fact too narrow of spacing, we can increase that by not going back into the flow editor, but with the object or the flow selected, we can navigate to the properties that we see on the left-hand side here, and you've got generated features. And if I just select the trees, this then is a different format of viewing what we just saw in the Dendro system. So if I uncollapse this group here, or expand this group here, we can see the array tool and these properties that I was looking at initially through the flow editor. So there's two ways you can edit it, and sometimes this is a more user-friendly approach than the flow editor and looking at the different nodes within there. So I can jump in here and let's say we want to double that spacing to 20. I'll hit enter, and we've now got that adjustment reflected in the flow on the screen. Okay, so that's Flow Legacy. Now we're going to move across to Flow 2.0, which uses the DAG system, and we're going to create exactly the same thing. We're going to create a row of trees. So the first thing we need to do is select our geometry. And what we need to do is add a property. So I've already got one here, but I'll just delete that for now and re-add it. So there's properties up the top. I'm just going to select add, and I'm going to search for the flow property. So whenever we create geometry and we want the flow 2.0 to affect that geometry, we need to add that property to the feature so it understands what it is referring to. So I'm just going to add the flow. It's asking me to select a flow. I haven't yet created a flow. So if I navigate to the flow editor here, we can see we are in flow 2.0 over here, and there is no flows in my dropdown just yet. So we just need to create a new flow. So I'm going to add a new flow, and we'll get a funky name, embryo wolf we have this time. And so now what we want to do is reference this flow name in our flow controls so they talk to each other. And so I'm going to grab this. I can see embryo wolf is now in there. I'm going to select that. And now they are talking to each other, and we've got a read and a write feature. So this is essentially the root feature that we saw in the Dendro system. And write feature is essentially the output feature. But you'll notice we have a lot more flexibility in how we position these and orientate them, and also connect, which we'll talk to later on. But we can move these around quite freely depending on what transformations we're looking to do. So I'm looking to do a very simple transformation, and that is the array tool. So the first, what I want to do is I can either double click to add it, or I can search down in my library at the bottom here. So I'm just going to double click, and I want to grab the array tool. So I'm going to select array, and I've got my array feature, and I'm going to firstly delete this, drag my read feature into the array tool, and then drag my write feature out there. And so I can see that reflected on the map now. My line has now been divided into a number of nodes. So the next step, I need to make sure that I apply the usage of a tree to each of these nodes. And the way we do that is, again, double click. And what I want to do is apply usage. So I'm going to grab apply usage. And instead of typing in here, I'm going to add another node that's get usage. And I'm just going to search for it in here. So this is where I want to locate my tree. And if I drag that out here, we need to make sure this is now connecting into my apply usage, and then this is connecting out here. And then if I drag this one into my apply usage, you can see now on the right-hand side, I've got my row of trees. So there are a few extra steps when you use the Flow 2.0 tool. But I guess the benefit of that is that you have added flexibility over how you want to control this algorithm for your design. And the last bit worth mentioning, if we want to change the spacing with our new flow that we have set up, we need to add an extra node, and that's an array transform. So if I double click, I'm searching for array, but we need the transform. So if I grab this, this basically allows me to control some of those settings within there. So if I edit the defaults, click here, I can see we get that similar user interface that we saw in the Dendro. So I've got my spacing up here, and I can jump in here, and let's say 20 meters is actually what I'm looking at. And now if I close my flow editor, we've got exactly the same output using two different methods.